Okay. All right, folks. Let me just get myself here. I want to thank you all for joining us today at Meteor Impact 2020. Welcome to the Enterprise Meteor panel. Today we have with us Peter Brown from Pathable, Adrian Lanning from On-Scene Technologies, and we may be joined a little later by Philippe Navola from Meteor Software. So first, thank you guys for coming. And why don't we do this? Why don't you go around the room, so to speak, and introduce yourselves? Peter, want to get started?
Sure. My name is Peter Brown. I'm CTO here at Pathable Incorporated that makes the very software you're using today. Hopefully that's been going well. We make software for in-person, virtual, and hybrid events, but these last few months, indeed, we've been doing only hybrid events. And so there's been a lot of changes at our company. We've increased in size by 5 or 6 times from where we were just 6 months ago. It's been a pretty crazy ride working with Meteor and trying to scale it while also pivot our product somewhat. But that's one of the big advantages we found working with Meteor is that we could pivot really quickly. But we're essentially these days replacing conference centers, airplanes, AV equipment, exhibitor halls, all of that stuff. Now people, obviously they can't do it in person. And so they're doing it through our software. Big challenge for us is just continuing to do that and build out features and figure out where the market's going to be 6, 12, 18 months down the road, what it's going to look like when there's some kind of a return to in-person conferences, but probably not going to go back to the way that it was. And yeah,
Excellent. Adrian?
Hello, everyone. I am founder and CTO of On-Scene Technologies. Our primary app is Share 911, and you can find out more about it at getshare911.com. So what we do is we try to help people be safer during emergencies through communication. So we provide an emergency management platform. It's a SaaS offering. It's totally based on Meteor, and have been using it for about 7 years. So we are primarily focused in the K-12 space. Right now, we help keep over 1 million kids safe, and we do that by providing the platform which lets people request help, report suspicious activities, and also broadcast alerts and messages, and also receive the responses coming back and displaying that in a manageable form, a way that the security teams or the agencies that respond to our customers can actually use that information in an actionable way. So we are primarily focused in the K-12 space, but we also do have enterprise customers. So that's kind of where I would hopefully add some value to this conversation.
Excellent. Thank you, Adrian. Joining us also is Philippe Navola from Meteor Software. And Meteor, Philippe, it's great to see you again. And you've been running around, I'm pretty sure. You've got a bunch of different talks you're giving. So I thank you for joining us and being part of this panel today. Why don't you give us some background as to you, yourself, and Meteor Software, and what you guys do and all that.
Yeah, I'm Philippe Navola. I'm a Meteor evangelist or advocate, what term you prefer. And I'm also working with Meteor like more than 7 years. And actually, like, it's fun that Peter is in this call as well, because Peter hired me like 3 years ago to also help Pathable to finish this new platform that's running on Meteor. And then I know a lot about this platform that we are using right now to make this conference. And I was also part of this. And besides Pathable, we are also running like huge Meteor apps like the Galaxy itself. And I'm going to talk more about it here and also in the other talk that I'm going to do later. Galaxy is also a Meteor app, and a lot of people don't know about it, but it is. And then we have Galaxy running in multiple regions, and we also have Galaxy running on Galaxy. It's amazing. And then we can talk more about it during this call.
That's really exciting. So everybody's using Meteor, which is the reason why you're here. Adrian, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about how you guys decided to get started using Meteor? Was there anything to the company before you built the application or your system with Meteor? And are you using other technologies with that? How's it evolved? Where did it start? How'd it go? You know, can you give us some insight?
Feel free to stop asking questions at any time. Let's see. My co-founder Eric Endres and I had originally talked about helping in the safety emergency space in a different way, just different ways to help. His experience is on the first responder side, whereas mine is on the tech side. And we looked at different platforms that were available, trying to solve different problems. One of the platforms that we looked at was a platform called Ushahidi, which is really cool if you guys get the chance to check it out. And what that is it's an open source platform for, I guess it's primarily focused for like NGOs. So they really focus more on like letting the community, just anybody in the community report incidents and help track things. So we originally started trying to use that platform to do things, but it didn't quite fit the use cases that we were after. Like one of Eric's big challenges was as a 911 dispatcher, as a firefighter, when he's deployed to like a school, there's a fire alarm. If he's lucky, he knows where in the building the fire alarm was tripped. But in general, you know, they just know that, hey, somewhere in this building there was a fire alarm that activated. So maybe there's smoke coming out of a window. But what he doesn't know is how many people are still in the building. Is anybody injured? Is anybody trapped? Like, what's going on? So the original idea was trying to crowdsource information. And we were doing different things. We were pitching the idea, and he ended up promising that we would have something for a customer in about 10 days. So basically I had 10 days to make something work. And I was like, oh crap, okay. So what do we do? I was looking around at different tech stacks. I tried Tower. I tried some other ones that, you know, this is like a while ago, right? So I found Meteor somehow, tried it out. It actually worked, like out of the box. So I was like, all right, we're going to do this. And got it done, was able to get it working, close the sale. That's pretty much how we started. We just basically kept building on top of that.
Now, were you guys, were you a JavaScript guy at the time, or is that just something that evolved?
I have done a lot of different languages. I don't know if you can tell, there's gray hairs over here. But JavaScript was something I was familiar with. It wasn't, it was mostly on the client side. It wasn't on the like Node.js side. So this startup was my main introduction to the Node.js side.
Wow, that's pretty cool. It's a good story. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Meteor, for being available at that time. Really appreciate that.
Peter, did you run into sort of like this life-saving, you know, client-saving situation when you picked Meteor, or did Pathful exist before Meteor, and did Meteor come into play at some later point?
Yeah, so our experience is actually quite the opposite. And it was a good recruiting tool for me at the time, as it turns out. Pathful was like 14 years old, which I can't believe. I'm the founder of this, original founder, and been doing it for 14 years, which I have some gray hairs too, many of which were produced at my experiences the last 14 years, getting us to where we are today. But we were originally a Ruby application that was, you know, Web 1.0 style, I guess, server generated HTML templates kind of a thing. And then We did the second generation of our application using Backbone when that first came out, and we did single page app, and that was great. And then we did it again, third generation, wrote it from the ground up, from scratch using Meteor. We actually still have customers on our second generation Ruby single page application. Really, we had the luxury of being able to methodically pick what we wanted to do for the third generation, the tooling. And why I say I was able to use it as a recruiting tool is because, you know, come join Pathable, work on this really cool framework. You know, we started 3-4 years ago when Meteor was new and really exciting. Come work with this exciting framework, and you're not under a huge amount of pressure to do it and make compromises, but instead we can take our time to do it correctly. And so, yeah, it was quite a different experience in a way that we were more of a mature business, a little more methodical about what we were doing. And we picked Meteor for a few reasons. One of the main ones actually is kind of particular to producing event apps, which is that we knew that it needed to operate really well in bad internet environments. You know, you go to a conference center, because originally, you know, we didn't do virtual events. It was all just supplemental software around in-person conferences. Before the event in your desktop computer to do your planning and all that kind of stuff. And then when you got there on your mobile phone to figure out where you were going and learn about the speakers and download the presentations and do polls and stuff. But when you're on site, Wi-Fi can be really terrible. Certainly 5-10 years ago, it was even worse. And so we thought Meteor was a good choice at the time because of how it used DDP and mini Mongo. That the entire application could effectively be running inside the client. The user could be interacting with it, and it would eventually become consistent with what was happening on the server. We even developed a system where it would replay changes that they made on their device, and those would go back to the server. And then the reactivity part was also really big because I wanted to have this kind of wow factor where even if we didn't explicitly need it, which it turned out, I know Philippe and I have argued about this a lot because I'm always like more reactivity and he's like less reactivity, mostly due to like scaling and performance thing. And I think in our relationship, we found a good balance now. We have our cake and we eat it too, I suppose. But that was a really important thing. We wanted to jump a generation ahead and provide an experience that was significantly better than anything our competitors were doing or that we thought that they would do. We knew it would be challenging to get it right, but this idea that, you know, it demos really well as well. You know, you're demoing to a bunch of people like in the enterprise environment, you make a change right here and suddenly everybody can see it on their device. You ask them to join, we set up a little template where we're doing the demo and everyone's seeing that at the same time in real time has been a really just powerful sales tool for us.
Wow, so you've gotten a lot of different benefits other than just technology out of it.
I ask, Peter, the front-end technology that you guys are using probably started on Blaze, and then have you started working something else in like React or anything?
I can't remember if we did start with Blaze, but very early on we adopted like the very first React capabilities. So it's funny, you know, we talk about how we're a Meteor application, but it would be equally valid and probably more so to say that we're a React application if you just talk about the amount of code that we have. But yeah, it's all React on the front end.
Philippe, you know, we've always had some, I guess, questions as to exactly what goes on at Galaxy. So can you fill us in a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Just a side story, like my Mac just decided to update like 5 minutes before this call. Is why I'm in the third device, but now I'm on my Mac again. But anyway, okay. Yes, like Galaxy is a combination of like 3 Meteor apps that are actually just one app, but they run with different configurations. Then we have one just for the API, and we have another one just for the billing, because as you can imagine, bill is really important. And as you charge by hour each container, and you have millions of containers in our database, then it's important to have a dedicated app just to process this. And also we have another app that's the client side of the app that we call dashboard internally. Usually that's the app that really you're using every day when you are deploying on Galaxy. And we also have in the other side a bunch of Go services that are supporting everything that's happening with AWS ECS and DynamoDB and metrics and a lot of other stuff that you need to do as a hosting. And then we have this good combination, because then in the Go side, you can have like multiple threads. You can have a proxy, you can respond to multiple requests in the same time. That's not the biggest advantage of Node.js. But in the other side, we can also have reactivity to consume this data in a very nice way. And in the Galaxy dashboard, we actually have a combination, as you can imagine, because of Apollo and the MDG chains towards GraphQL, where you use subscription sometimes, and you also use Apollo sometimes. And then that's also interesting because you can combine the benefits of both in the same place, and it's working really well. As you can see, like in the charts, when you have a deployed app, you can see live, like how your CPU is behaving, your memory is behaving, your connections. And this combination of a lot of components, then it's a huge challenge to keep all this working all the time. But I believe you have been successful doing this, but it's this magic between Meteor, Go services, and also GraphQL in the middle.
It's pretty amazing. So let me ask a little question that I'm kind of curious about. So is Galaxy all on cloud services, or are there any on-premise portion that you guys manage?
No, 100% cloud services. And to be honest, we are 100% on AWS right now.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Okay. So that's great. I think that's sort of the first part, the background that we talked about and so on. So, you know, when I think about enterprise applications, I think about, you know, the difference between something that that is really there for the benefit of the whole organization, right? There are systems that enable a company-wide workflow or to be able to achieve some kind of organizational function versus, you know, an application that you write just for, you know, just for personal use or personal productivity. And it seems that when you're talking about the products that you have, we're talking about how we're talking about the services that you provide that in some way tie in with others. Adrian, you I think described pretty well how yours works with the K-12 environment. Can you talk about like how that would work end to end in one of your enterprise customers?
Yes, but before I do, I think we're forgetting one person's introduction.
Okay.
Who might that be?
Oh, you're talking about me?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Who are you, Alim?
Hi, I'm Alim Ghaffar. I'm your moderator. I'm one of the co-hosts of this Meteor Impact today. I should have probably said that earlier. You guys are the stars. The panelists are the stars to me, and that's what it is. I co-organize, and I used to co-organize the New York Meteor user group with Adrian Lanning, who is with us here today. And about 4 years ago, we also put on an event called Meteor Camp at the United Nations, which was one of the first all Meteor conferences that was out there. So I've been doing this for a while. I'm retrained recently as a data scientist, so I'm doing that too. But I love Meteor. Use it on small projects. I don't really have, you know, large scale projects like these, which is why I love chatting with people that do them and hearing how they build out, and it's really exciting. So anyway, thank you, Adrian, for bringing that up.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's great to be working on another conference with you. So if my memory
sorry
serves,
to interrupt.
Yes,
but I need to mention that our last conference together in person, except Peter, was in a Starbucks in New York, and it was pretty good. But go ahead.
Yes, it was.
Nice. It's a mini conference. Yes.
Yes.
That was awesome that you were able to come out there, Philippe. All right. So I believe the question was, how do we interact with enterprise customers? So we don't have a lot of enterprise customers. We have, I mean, relatively speaking, we have some customers in manufacturing, anything from, let's see, we have customers that manufacture gaskets. We have customers that make all the way up to like medical equipment, and another one that does microphones and sound systems.
Do you have a customer that sends things to space?
No, not anymore.
Oh, not anymore. Okay.
We used to. We're actually contractually obligated to not mention them.
That's why I only talk about the subject matter.
Yes. But we also have customers in healthcare, and we also do, let's see, municipalities, which not quite enterprise-y, but it's kind of cool when like the whole town,
Sure.
Whole city government is using your platform. So
how would a healthcare company use OnScene?
Yeah. So
and then
they would use
tie in? I'm sorry. And then what do you tie into in order to make it all like mesh?
Yeah. So the main reason that, well, I believe that the main reason enterprise customers use our platform is for a accountability perspective. So when emergencies happen, a lot of companies would have like a phone tree or something like really old school, and we're replacing that. You can use, it's a lot more efficient to be able to just send out an alert and say, hey, please check in whether you're okay or not. Are you going to be able to come to work? We saw this when we had customers that were affected by hurricanes. Like the organization may be global or national to the US, but their headquarters are in one place, and then they have staff in Florida that might be impacted by hurricanes, or in Texas when that happened. So the people in those situations could quickly account for themselves, for their coworkers. Managers can say, whether, what's going on, and it can bubble up, right? So accountability is a big part. We also play in the wellness side of things. So wellness screening, making sure, since COVID, making sure that people can very easily answer whatever questions are required, and then that information is easily available to.
So is this useful for like contact tracing?
Exactly, yeah, contact tracing, so you can tell when somebody was there, what locations they were at. So when somebody does test positive, you can go back and look at the reports and stuff. As well as workplace violence. So that's actually probably the biggest one for healthcare specifically. A lot, like a shocking amount of violence happens in healthcare facilities. Not because of the employees, but because they're dealing with just a lot of different people from a lot of different levels of the world and society, and then they are in a place where people that have beef, something that I guess they just know where they're going to be, they can go there and can cause trouble. I don't know why, but that's kind of where we would be helping. So the part where we found Meteor helps with the enterprise side of things is I guess just in general, the integration side is something everybody has to worry about. But for enterprise especially, I think that that's a very big part of it. Flexibility of being able to customize things is huge. Like anybody that's hasn't experienced the joy of enterprise sales, no two customers will want the same thing. Like even if you have this amazing platform, you go there, you say, look at all these things, and they're like, that's great, we love OAuth 2, man, when we implement that, we are going to be all over that. But in the meantime, can you integrate with SAML? And you're like, SAML, wasn't that like 20 years ago? And you're like, yeah, but we're enterprise, we move very, very slowly. Like they won't tell you this, but this is like legit what it actually means. They have existing businesses that work. Their primary, at least in the industries that we interface with, their primary revenue streams are not tech related. Like they use technology, but they're not interested in overhauling their main, technical systems every year to keep up with trends. So you're dealing with old school technology policies that may be regulated, that they have to, comply with. And if anybody caught Abigail's talk earlier, that was really, really cool. And you're going to have to be flexible in what you're doing, even like getting down to like password policies and things like that, like stuff that we've run into. We try to stay up to date with like NIST's latest recommendations and things. And they're like, NIST nowadays says, don't do the whole like expired password after some time kind of thing. They say, don't do the 3 different categories of like uppercase, lowercase, number kind of stuff. Just let your password, like let your users do it, as long as it's a certain I think the recommendation is at least 8 characters. After that, encourage passphrases, and more importantly, compare the passwords to known
vulnerabilities.
Known vulnerability databases, which we do. And then, you go talk to enterprise guys and you're like, yeah, that's great, but here's what we need. And you have to do this in order to get the business. Yeah. So that's great that NIST is saying that, but you need to re-implement like all the 3 different things. And it has to work just for us, not every other customer on your system. So enterprise in a nutshell is basically integrate and customize, and very long sales cycles.
Right, and make sure you've got some kind of audit trail that they can go back to if they need it, right? Peter, you said that you moved from 2.0 to 3.0 on to Meteor. Meteor, is very opinionated. It's got a lot of things in the box. One of the other things that, for many of us that used Meteor at the beginning, was we didn't have to have a DBA. We didn't have to have an ops person working with us to build and implement and get a system out. We didn't really have to have a designer. There are lots of pre-built systems, pre-built components out there that you could kind of grab and use, smart packages that implement a lot of features. In terms of Pathable, did you find that you moved any of your functions into fewer people because they could handle them, or did you maintain this sort of functional separation among staff? And I mean, did you look at it as getting any kind of personnel benefits from using something like Meteor? You know where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember back when we started, and like the sky was the limit. Meteor was going to solve all our problems. It's totally amazing. Look, you just push a button, you say Meteor deploy, and it's like you're already in business. The fact that at that time, I don't hear this brandied around anymore. I don't know if it's in favor, but isomorphic JavaScript application was really appealing at the time. We previously came from one where it was Ruby in one place and JavaScript in another, and SQL in another place with YAML. And it was really appealing, the idea that you were just going to have JavaScript. JSON is JavaScript. MongoDB is JavaScript. It's like JavaScript the whole way through. Maybe that'll make hiring easier. Maybe it'll make the cognitive load easier. And I think that's probably been true. I feel like a lot of these comparisons, talking about how much better is a framework or Meteor than other alternatives, I'd really only be able to analyze if we had gone down 2 paths simultaneously to build the same application. In some ways we did, in that it was like the 3rd generation, I guess. But Pathable sits at kind of a interesting boundary between enterprise and consumer, in that the vast majority of people that experience our application are like attendees here, coming to an event and consuming content. But the people we sell to are actually the enterprises, the people that are putting on the events, the big companies that are doing a series of events or whatever. They're the ones that cut us the check. And so it's so true, the way that those guys, their needs are like they have some really strange need that you never would have occurred to you. And if you don't have it for them, they won't even talk to you. They're like, yep, this is just like a non-starter for us. And it's often very surprising because like, I've never heard anyone else want that. I guess I could see why you do, but okay, in order to get your business, actually for a long time, a significant part of our business model was saying yes to customizations that these guys insisted on having. So like essentially we could make payroll. Like there was periods there where we need to get this $30,000 contract, or, you know, we're not going to make payroll 2 months from now. They want this little feature, you know. And what happened with the previous 2 generations is it really turned into a Frankenstein. Being able to accommodate those and essentially like make core changes to the software to do that proved really challenging. And so the kind of architectural approach that we took for the 3rd generation was to bake in adaptability and customizability into the product itself. And I don't know, it's kind of amazing what it can do, in that like the whole thing is based on widgets and every single feature is delivered in a widget that can be put on any page. You know, you guys see the application that you're using today, and you may have been attending other Pathable events on site or virtual and not actually know it, because no 2 sites are the same. It's like WordPress, or there was that Andreessen site that was like a social network to build social networks. Remember the name of that one? I can't remember it. It was green. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know. It's Pathable is kind of like that, where
Okay.
you get pages and you can put widgets on it to completely define how your community works, your social features. And so that's great because it helped us. That was our effort to solve this problem from the outset, from the beginning, of being able to basically say yes to any request without having to go and modify the software itself. But the big challenge with that, especially you know, with publications and reactivity and a lot of the overhead that comes in terms of performance, is that extreme adaptability has resulted in extreme complexity. And so it has turned out that in the end, to be able to operate the software that works in this way with all the benefits of Meteor has required significant expertise, I find, you know, from guys like Philippe, where basically from what I can tell, like unless you find someone who has had hard lessons doing some specific things in Meteor because of the particulars around mini Mongo performance in the client, or publication and interactions with whether you're using Redis oplog or oplog tailing, God forbid, all that kind of stuff just has to be understood in and of itself. Certainly you can find smart people to come and they can learn that stuff, but my sense is that someone coming in with like a Vue.js application that's running on Postgres, that's housed in Amazon, a lot of that stuff is sort of taken care of and easier to get right initially. But if you can pull it off, it can be really powerful.
So what do you think? You made the move over from Rails into Meteor, right? And what were some of the expectations that you had that didn't quite turn out the way Meteor was actually able to deliver?
I mean,
then,
one of them was that when Meteor moved to well, initially we had kind of had this idea that you were just going to be able to sprinkle magic reactivity dust over everything, and basically you'd be able to build your app normally with a normal amount of effort, but everything would be real time and it would scale, and that was going to be awesome. And that definitely proved to not be true. You know, now understanding a little bit more about it and some new technologies that have come along from the community, like Redis oplog, and now we're doing this new thing, which is really amazing. Fook and Ollie gave I think Ollie's even here right now, gave a presentation on it earlier with using MongoDB chain streams. There's a lot of new possibilities for sort of allowing that magic to happen the way it was originally promised, I guess. I think also because we had this sort of unique reliance on mini Mongo and producing apps that could function offline, I had expected by this point in the evolution that they would have been a continued commitment to mini Mongo and expanding the capabilities of it, you know, doing things like being able to support reactive aggregations or expanding the query capabilities of Minimongo, adding indexing in the client, you know. And when GraphQL came around, it was sort of like what happened with Blaze, where support for that and interest in it just fell off. And I mean, I'm sure there was other people that were interested in it, but it seemed like no one had the same interest in it that we did. And so that's caused some challenges for us in being able to support it the way we want to. I mean, just more effort we have to do to advance it for our needs, but I had hoped that it was going to be more advanced via the community.
Sure, sure. So, Philippe, it seems like you've bridged the gap on both of these companies here, right? I mean, you've been at Pathable, you've run into some of these issues that Peter's been talking about, you worked them through with him, and now you're over at Meteor Software, and you've got the Galaxy business that you help with. You know, what are some of the, I think, if I were to describe it, just the normal issues in the course of scaling and growing as an organization and dealing with more customers, more load, different workflows that impacted the expectations people had of this magic box called Meteor, right? That they thought would solve things for them. And how much of that is really, you know, solving that issue is really just being a good software architect and understanding where things work well and when you have to decouple and when you have to have certain, centers of excellence and move them onto different platforms or different pieces of software or maybe their own services in order to make it work well. You've got something to add to that? I'm sorry.
Sure.
You've got, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I have been building production apps with Meteor for many years, and it was always in my mind that it was not a good call to just add subscriptions everywhere, because if you start to think about like the problem, it's not an easy problem to solve. Like you need to get data from one side and you need to send the data to the other side. And of course you need to do a lot of comparison if you want to save network, or you need to just spend a lot of network and send all the data all the time. And that's also not good. And at the time, Meteor was trading off more for the side of use less network because you have more capacity in the server. In the network, like almost 10 years ago already, it was a lot less than today. Today we have a lot more power in the network side. And then this kind of trade-offs, what I see, and I'm talking with clients on Galaxy side like every day, literally. And most of these clients that are requesting help, you are trying to understand better what's going on. They are clients that are growing with Meteor. What's good news, because they are able to grow and then they start to face this challenge. And the good part is that we have solutions today. I agree with Peter, because in like 2 years ago, we have this disruption because MDG, and everybody knows that, was start to focus a lot more in the data layer, and they decide to invest on GraphQL because it's a standard. It's not like something that they created like DDP, and they have the force of Facebook behind it to propagate the word about GraphQL. And then they saw this opportunity to grow using the data layer. And that was why Peter was expecting more evolution like on Minimongo, but they are evolving in the Apollo cache that they have in the client side. And that was this disruption that I can't say anything that you don't know. But also in the other side, the community was there. And the community, and I need to mention Theodore, that was the guy that came up with this idea in the implementation of the RedZoplog. And it's a very clever idea. And RedZoplog brings to Meteor the horizontal scaling that the MongoDB uplog was not able to do it. And now we even have, like a few weeks ago, a new RedZoplog that was created by another guy that's called Remis, that's going to write a blog post in the Meteor blog pretty soon about it. And with this new RedZoplog, it's even better. Then what I see for like enterprise perspective, and if you are watching this and you are worried about, okay, but what are my next challenge, is that the community is providing solutions. And now as Tiny, and I'm here as Meteor Software, that's the company that now is on Meteor, we also have the same interest because we are also investing a lot on Meteor, and nobody buys a company to just like to see the company dying. And actually we are doing this, and like Galaxy is growing. I'm talking more about Galaxy in the other talk, then I don't want to spoil a lot here. Okay. But then like what I see is that you can benefit from all these stages, because when you start, you don't need to start with Redis, But you know, like, okay, if I see that this is becoming a bottleneck, I know where to go next. And as Peter said, we also have some experimental packages with change streams. That is a new MongoDB feature that can also help a lot in this. Then the way I see Meteor right now, it's a mature framework where you have solutions for the problem that you're going to find. And if you don't have solution, you'll probably have other peer companies that are also facing the same challenge. And maybe you can group together to solve this problem. And that was what I was missing in the past, this coordination that I believe you are trying to do a little bit better now. And we are achieving some results from this like group learning that we are doing. And we can improve the framework over time, because when you see a lot of new frameworks, and I like new frameworks because I'm always studying new frameworks, but in some cases it's very easy to hit a wall. Then sometimes I was just building a website and I was not able to do something with a new framework. But with Meteor, that's for sure not going to happen, because we have business running on Meteor for many years. And I think this is the main benefit of using a tool that's already in the market. And also in the next talk, I'm going to mention at least 5 businesses that I know that are doing really well just in the recent months, not like five years ago, because that nobody cares about 5 years ago. Then that's the benefit. Like you see a platform that you can grow, and you see people that are already growing with this platform. Then you have this confidence. But in the beginning of your company, you don't need to worry about it, because you know that startups usually they fail. And they fail if they invest a lot of time, like in the first day, to support Reds, to have a lot of crazy stuff. The chance that they're going to fail is even bigger, because we know timing is really important in our work. And then that is what I see as the benefit. But as you said, maybe in some use cases, like we have on Galaxy, you're using Go in some parts. You should not use Meteor. But right now, if you're just starting a new app, and I'm doing this myself, and I'm going to talk about this later in a very detailed way, that I'm choosing Meteor to start every new project. But maybe later, a few pieces of this project, I should migrate to a different technology if Meteor is not the best one. Because I don't understand this idea of like, this is the best framework, because for me, it's a lie all the time. Like you need to understand the case, and you need to combine solutions to have the best product, but not the best framework. Because a framework, as the name says, is just like some place for you to start, but then you need to start to make your own decisions. And I think where you can add a lot on this, and we are still not there, is documentation. Like, and you talk a lot about this, Ali, like we need to have like better education, like how to scale an app with Meteor. Now we have these packages, but when this package is necessary, or when I should avoid this solution. And then that's what we are building with the clients, but on request based. Like when a client asks questions about this, usually I get in a call like this, and I can explain everything that they should do, in my opinion, and then they need to decide what to do next. But usually they are going well later. But we need to transform this in a better format. And Matt was also talking about this, like this is our fault, and we need to help the community to have these guides in a proper place. And we are doing this, but we can move faster. Like, I don't know if you saw, but we have a new guide for hot code push. That's a very nice feature of Meteor. And many of Meteor users, even users that have like years of experience, they don't understand what's going on. And then sometimes they think, oh, hot code push is not working. Hot code push is not reliable. It's just because you have some rules there that you need to respect. And then that's the part that it's our fault, but we are improving. And I think that's the good news.
Or
That's
those native
terrific. Okay.
Cordova plugins.
All right,
Yeah.
I've just got one last question. I'll send this as a round robin, and then what we'll do is we'll turn this over to some questions from the audience in a bit. Got about 5 minutes on this. So based on your individual experiences, what do you think are some common stumbling blocks that people will run into? There'll be sort of a wall that most people will just decide that it's, Meteor doesn't work. And then what kind of solutions could they get? Where could they find these solutions? Is it forums? Is it documentation? Is it Stack Overflow? Is there some special stash of information that you know about that nobody else seems to know about that maybe they can benefit from? So I'm going to start with Peter, and then we'll move over to Adrian and finish with Felipe. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like probably I can imagine if I was arguing in my business to build a new app, and I was arguing to pick Meteor. Still, part of the problem would just be perception. The idea that you go search for Meteor and this stuff comes up like, is Meteor dead? And there's these blog posts about it. And then invariably comes stuff that really today is pretty outdated, but people saying how Mongo is a terrible database. It's not so much true anymore, but there's this baggage that comes along with it. And I don't believe any of that stuff is true. And we're a great example of a really successful enterprise that has scaled Meteor, and it's been a fantastic experience. I can confirm with Felipe that Galaxy really does work like all the time. It's amazing what it does. But I think having the sort of courage to analyze the needs for your product, and if Meteor is a good fit, to have the courage to advocate for it and go with it. It's also really easy to get started with. As we know, it's a great prototyping tool, so you can confirm it with experience. And then kind of related to that, I don't know, I haven't checked recently, but I'm sure if I go look for like Vue.js or React or whatever, there's modern books that are talking about Meteor from current experts, about the latest and greatest. And that's one of those things that's a signal to me usually that, like, okay, this is something that I can invest in, and it's going to be there in a few years, and it's going to continue to advance. And I don't know, maybe there are these kind of things happening. There was some time ago, Sasha Grief and others were doing books about Meteor when there was a lot of hype. But I'd like to see that happen, in terms of training, like some real like canonical authorities about the right way to use Meteor today and the features that it's providing today. Because other than that, it really is like, it's just kind of the Wild West, which is sort of fun. And that's how it was, back in the day, even with Ruby and stuff. It was basically all community contributed content, and that's where you got the best information. But yeah, I guess that's, more documentation, like Felipe says.
Yeah. Adrian?
I think Peter answered it extremely well. Yeah, I actually want to touch on something that Philippe mentioned earlier about the perception that MDG kind of dropped Meteor and went to GraphQL. You could look at it that way. That's one definitely valid, way to look at it. But another way that you could potentially look at it is that they got Meteor to the point where it was working, and then they listened to the community that said, hey, look, scaling is something that is very challenging with Meteor. And then they looked at what technologies were out there, and they said, instead of building our own thing, here's this technology called GraphQL, and it actually solves a lot of these problems. Let's invest in that. So now we not only have Meteor, which is working great at the things that it does wonderfully, but now you can also pull in these other technologies like React, like Vue, like GraphQL. And then, a while ago, there was this perception that MongoDB is not as reliable as some other option. Now you can use another option with Meteor, with GraphQL. You want to run on MySQL, go for it. You want to run on Postgres, go for it. Just hook up your GraphQL system, which probably should be Apollo because it's great. I wanted to say that I think for enterprise use of Meteor, like I used to do contracting before I basically my career has been do contracting to make money, do startups, like start a startup to lose money, and then keep doing that. This past one has been not the same, which is very good. But when I was doing contracting, I was working in enterprise, size companies, and I would have loved to have Meteor back then, because line of business applications, you probably aren't going to run into a lot of the scaling issues that came along with like early Meteor, because your user base is going to be constrained to within that organization. You're going to be graded on your ability to produce something quickly that solves a problem. It's like a startup basically, but it has to work inside this environment, right? So the challenges there, I would say, are you going to be able to get buy-in because of the ecosystem within that company? And the fact that Meteor is based on Node is wonderful. You know, you can pull in NPM packages and everything. That's all amazing. But I would primarily say, like what Peter was saying, that you kind of have to look at what the needs of the project are. And what I would like to see for Meteor to do would be to kind of list the different, like enumerate the different parts of Meteor that are doing amazing things independent of other parts. Like a lot of the focus on Meteor in the beginning was the subscription model, the reactivity model, you know, everything, but then you run into potential performance problems, right? But there's a lot of stuff that Meteor is doing that is very valuable to somebody making a line of business app, making a new startup, just making an app in general that solves a lot of problems. Like our team is very small. There's no way we could be able to support as many customers as we do from a technical side if we weren't using Meteor. Being able to have Cordova, just like, you know, a native mobile app, just work. We've also integrated with Electron. These are things that I think any enterprise would benefit from. So I think publicizing that more would be valuable.
Sure. The point I want to really try to get to here, though, is the resources that somebody who's using Meteor and maybe has gotten a little down the path, when they run into some very specific problems, such as, you know, maybe a Salesforce integration or, you know, tying in with an ERP system and so on, maybe having to pass weird, you know, tokens back and forth and having to go through a number of different proxies. I mean, where would you find information that could help you get through this, right? I mean, so what are your go-to resources for figuring things out is really what I'm trying to get to when we start, because the enterprise space is a very small portion of a lot of what Meteor is used for, right? It's kind of specialized. So if I were going to take on an enterprise project and I was going to, you know, integrate with, you know, Cable Data or SolarWinds or something like this, you know, where would I go to find information about people that may have had similar experiences or done a previous implementation, or, you know, and if it's greenfield, like how would you approach it? How would you figure out?
I'll take a quick answer to that.
Okay.
Good Lord, custom tokenization, security packaging is like the bane of my existence. So I would say that because Meteor is based on Node, you just search for, you know, Node solutions to the problem. You also, because Node is not as, or my impression is Node is not as prevalent in enterprise as something like Java or a .NET, you know, ecosystem. There might not be a package that does exactly what you want, and you might actually have to go search for the .NET way to do it and just look at how they do it and then kind of port that to Node. But then you really,
That's great. That's great. I was going to pass this on to Philippe and see if he was going to add anything to that. I mean, you're over at Meteor Software. You've been doing a lot of consulting in the past. You've built a lot of products. You must have read a lot of documentation and found resources that you find reliable.
Yeah, I think the first place to go is always Google. And as Adrian said, like the best way to start is to try to find a solution in Node, because the way that I think Meteor, it's like a Create React app for both sides, because Create React app helps you to have your client side, but Meteor helps you to have both sides. Then you just type Meteor create and you have both already working and like full stack. And then, but when you want to solve a problem, maybe it's better to just fall back to the runtime environment that's Node.js. But what it's really good about Meteor is like the forums, and we are also growing in the Slack. You can also have a lot of help there. And if you're finding a specific problem with Meteor, probably already somebody faced the same exactly problem before in the forums. And that's a unique feature of Meteor, because the other platforms, they are very segmented, and Meteor have these forums with a lot of information. And I think the other benefit of having Galaxy around is because we are listening to the problems of thousands of clients every day. And then we can be like this source of truth. And if you really don't find anything in a public way, you can just ask in the support. And that's what we are doing with a lot of clients. And I think this is one of the biggest reasons to use Galaxy. It works great. You can rely on it. But also, if you have a real problem, you can just ask the experts. And it's just not me. Like we have Renan, we have Denise, we have other guys that are really nailing it. Like they know a lot about Meteor, they know a lot about the solutions that we have. Then that's a very unique benefit of using Galaxy, because you can just rely on us. And then it's very rare where you don't have just paste it and it's going to be fixed, or your problem is exactly this. And one good thing that we are trying to do, and I think that met with your question, we are not just helping with Meteor. Even when the guy is asking something that's not related to Meteor, it's just like a node problem or a MongoDB problem, we are trying to provide help. Like you're trying to provide at least a way for you to continue. And
don't say that, man. You're going to be inundated. You're not going to have time to breathe.
No, but that's okay. We can handle it. And like we want that. And I have been saying this in many talks, and people should use more the support. And if you go too much, you are going to say, okay, sorry, but that's too much. But that's usually not the case. Like people are asking too little, like they should ask more. And because it's good for us. Like if you think about the company, we have a business that we can make money, that's Galaxy. And you have the other business that's the open source that you don't make money directly. But if you learn a lot about this side in the business that's paying us, and then you can extract this learning and apply to the open source, it's the best combination. Then both sides can benefit in the same time. And maybe even if you don't like Galaxy for some reason, you can benefit from this as well, because later this is going to become a guide or a doc. And then you can also, it's that the way that I see this business going forward. Is like, we need to have more business running on Galaxy so you can learn more, so you can apply more strategies to the open source code. And that's kind of what I'm going to talk about in 2 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, and since we only have a couple of minutes, we do have a few questions. I'd like to get at least one or two of them in there. So I have a question here that what would be the one thing you'd like to improve in Meteor for more enterprise adoption? That can go to anyone. There's another related question, which is, have any enterprise customers demanded audits? And if so, how complex was the process of delivering an audit? So do either of you have an experience with that could answer that?
Peter, go for it.
We get a lot of questions about security. I don't know if those are particular to Meteor. I don't know. We've had people ask about those. As far as features that I wish were invested more, I've already mentioned MongoDB.
Mini Mongo?
Yeah, Mini Mongo, and just the publication system between the two. I don't know, it'd be great to get, I don't know, more community support on those, or even roll some of those really critical ones that, like, I don't know if people, do they have Meteor apps that aren't using Redis oplog? Like, it's crazy to use the oplog tailing now, it seems like. And so I don't know, maybe some of that stuff could be made core packages, or something that I know Philippe has talked about that Pathable certainly is interested in, is some kind of sponsorship. You know, take these packages that are really essential to the success of the entire framework and put a little bit of money behind them. You know, we'd love to participate in something like that. So either bring those in core, or get some program going. I think there's a lot of really good stuff out there that if you put a little bit of energy behind it, it could do even better.
All right, so I think we gotta say goodbye now. So guys, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, appreciate you taking the time to do this. Bye.
Thank you.